7 daughters.
7?
Big business, race cars. I've been racing cars.
7 daughters.
So you're a different animal, man. Like 7 daughters.
Yeah.
Like at number 2, what are you thinking after that?
The next one's got to be a boy. I mean, statistics and averages tell you, like,
Tried 7 times to get a boy.
I mean, if you flip a coin 7 times, heads comes up once. No,
At least.
but you know, the honest, I had 3 daughters, and then I had to start over again.
Right.
And so met Melody, and she had 4 daughters, so we have 7 combined. Awesome. It's pretty crazy. But I've raised 7 14-year-old girls, and they all lived. And maybe they shouldn't have.
More importantly, you live.
And I live too. Correct.
You still have ammo?
Oh yeah, it's well kept, and a lot is kept to dry. It's all prepared. Yeah, weapons all laid out and well oiled. Yeah, part of life, man.
Yeah, I have 1. She's 3. Although I feel like she's gonna beat up a lot of boys.
Yeah,
because she's a tough cookie. But it scares the hell out of me.
I'll give you a warning. 14.
Yeah.
That's when it all goes where you're just the dumbest person that ever lived. I just say it, like, you just suddenly become incompetent, incapable, no advice, like, and I'm gonna give you the best advice you've ever received in your entire life. Just be patient.
Yeah,
because they come back.
Oh, so you gotta wade the storm.
Oh yeah, like the first 2 or 3, I fought them really hard, like really dug on them, you know, and then the next one was like, hey, whatever. It worked out.
It worked out. They came back.
Yeah, they all came back at the same time. It's crazy. It's
Dad knows what he's talking about, but I'm not going to tell him that.
Because as soon as you say, hey, I know what I'm talking about, they're sure you don't.
Oh, yeah. No, they got the internet, dude.
Oh, yeah, and there was that. Or the neighbor. Oh, Uncle Bob said, Uncle Bob's an idiot. Okay.
Uncle Bob just got out of the pen.
Yeah, but he's smarter than you because your dad. That's part of it.
Everybody, we want to welcome Robin Roberts from NPE, No Prep Elite. And these guys, we actually were out at Texas Motorplex watching you guys put on the final invitational.
Right.
Robin went out. That's okay. We were pulling for you, man.
I'm a dumbass.
I'm not gonna mention that. You're gonna tell that story. You're gonna tell that story.
Yeah, okay.
But there's much more to Robin's life than racing, and it seems like, and if you talk to his beautiful wife, that's all they do. But there's a lot more to it. 7 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Central Power Systems, which started when?
1954. Okay. Long before me.
Long before you. Yep. Was that your dad's?
No, I worked at a competing larger distributor separate from them. I worked there for 23 years and built that up, was a part of building it up. Became a president, chief operating officer of that company, and then said, hey man, I got to do something bigger. And I just had always been working toward buying my own. And so Central Power Systems was a smaller distributor that had an aging ownership. So I came in and bought it in 2015. And then we took it to the moon from there. So I'm very proud of what we've done with that company, and the moves that we've made are incredible, and the business is fantastic. And so I'm proud of that team and how great they are.
Yeah, I can vouch for you, man. We do business with you guys, and every single step of the way, in your world, there's problems every day. Like when it comes to Central Power, but you guys are freaking Johnny on the spot.
Yeah,
we feel like a big fish. I mean, and we don't get that treatment with the Holts and the RDOs of the world. So appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a big endorsement. I mean, to me, I'll just say this: coming up from starting in the business as a technician and fixing machines and getting everything going, and then moving into sales and then service management, ranch management, and VP. To me, I'm more angry when we can't service something than when we don't sell it. Because if we don't service it, there's no business for us. Mm-hmm. That's what we're all about.
What is this? What is Central Power? I'm not in the business that Jay's at. So what is Central Power?
So I guess the elevator speech kind of goes like this. we have equipment dealerships, truck repair dealerships, and those are two separate models of who we are. And then there's maybe a third and a fourth, four wings of it. Then there's a third entity that does generator distribution and sales and support. And then we manufacture generators. So it's quite involved. More than 500 employees. We're projected to be in 26 to be over $1 billion. Like, we're just rolling along. 21 locations across the U.S. And I started, when I bought it in 2015, it was a $100 million company with 9 locations. Mm-hmm. So we've rocked it up. Our team has really just taken it on and just burst out.
When you first took over the company, what were some of the key memorable struggles that you had to work through to get to where you are now?
I had to completely rebuild the culture.
Oh,
completely.
Yeah, you mentioned that you came into an older ownership.
Yeah, old, stodgy. They were only going to do the things that they knew how to do and nothing else. And we had to take this business where it had been run by a family. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think when it progresses past a certain level, it just takes a different mindset. And I had a different mindset of where we wanted to go with it. So to change that culture and rebuild it, well, it was tough.
Did you start over? Did you get rid of everybody pretty much and have to start over? Or was that a struggle to get everybody to retrain their minds?
Well, I retrained some brains, and then the ones who didn't want to retrain, they found a new home.
Promoted to custom.
Yeah, they got to go where they fit. And you know, you have to do that because there are people who want to go along with you and see your vision, and they want to grow with you. And then there are those who, man, they don't. They want it the old way. They wish it was the old guy was back or whatever, and you just got to move on.
Yeah.
We changed all of our branch managers in a year and a half. We changed, except one, and I made him retire. So yeah, we really took on a huge challenge, and I knew I would. The first couple of years, I told my wife, first 2 years, like, I'm just going to be buried in this thing, and then I'm going to build up a couple of VPs, and I'm going to have them take on leadership roles, and then I'll teach them how to do it, and we'll grow out, and then we'll be able to go do some things. And that is how we got the MPK, honestly, because that was the only way we could get out of
something
business. Something stuck in it. Yeah, we're going to go get real busy doing this other stuff. 19 weekends a year. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So how did you, what's your role in it now, in the current time? What do you do now?
Yeah, that's a great question, because by building up the team beneath me, and by making those people great and teaching them and leading them, and some of them just giving them the opportunity to rise up and do what they know how to do with direction and vision where we were going, that's been a great transition to where now that's pretty much all I do. Set direction, set vision, find the capital, choose where we're going to invest, make big moves. Those are all my decisions that we have to do because it's going to come back to me, right? And so to have this team now that is so good at operation, where they weren't when I got there, man, it's just awesome. But what I do all day is think. In all honesty, do a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, a lot of structural, where we're going, how's it going to work, how's it going to flow, thinking about the whole process. Sometimes I get bogged down and you get calls from someone, hey, this is a big problem, you step in. But what you're really doing is you're resetting the team's mindset to where you want it to go. And it's challenging, but it's a lot of fun.
That's very interesting. That's what was it like releasing the reins after you've spent so many years trying to restructure, redevelop? Was it easy for you to just kind of, okay, you guys go do this, you go do this, or was it a big stressful undertaking to just let it go?
And I think he's asking that because he might be facing something like that.
Yeah.
I got some advice for you. But I also would say this too. I've built different. And I didn't realize that until you come along and you do some things right. I loved fixing machines, and I loved making things go, and I enjoyed how that worked. I even liked running shops and running operations. Like, that was a lot of fun for me. But that second piece taught me that I didn't enjoy fixing machines as much as I loved building teams. I loved building out people who could do things and putting it all together and molding it to where it all just flowed. And for some reason, I'm just pretty good at that. And so through my business, that has shown up in this case where these people beneath me or around me, I don't say, because they're not beneath me, they're around me.
I use the term work with me.
Absolutely, because if they don't, it doesn't work. But building up this team that can just then flow the business, actually the transition was super easy because I had that in mind the entire way. My mindset was always to build them up and teach them how, and then to step out of the way to go do the next thing. And you can't go do the next thing unless you got people that can do the current thing and take it and run it. And so it's just been a fun process. I learned that what I love to do is build teams, and it's what's made a great business.
That's interesting, man. So there's a controversy, right? So you get to a point in a business to where you figure out you're good at, like you said, running the shops, being a tech, fixing machines, doing things like that. But at the end of the day, you start to figure out your other superpowers calling you.
Right.
How uncomfortable is that? It's God pulling you away from what you're doing.
Yeah.
And he's saying, hey, I need you over here to develop people.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't uncomfortable with it at all. In fact, I relished it.
Really?
I looked so forward to the next thing. Like I'm a guy who, I never go to vacation in the same place twice.
Yeah.
I'm just not that kind of guy. Like I want to go to the next thing. Where's the next thing? And I always did that in business too. Like I'm just going to take the next step. I'm going to build this and go to the next step. And the next step was just, I mean, in all honesty, you get to this point where now the next step is so big. And I look back sometimes and I'm like, how did it get here?
What am I doing?
What are we doing? And why am I even in this place? And then you realize, because all along the way, I just took the next step. I did the next thing. This needs to be done. Do that. These people need to be trained. Do that. This business needs to go here. Okay, do it. And I built relationships with customers. I built relationships with people. Not only the people who worked for me, but with customers. And pretty soon they trust you and they ask you to do these things that are beyond normal, and you go and do it, and your team is right there with you because you built such trust with them. Like I've had people historically work. The first guy who ever brought me a part in the business 32 years ago, right? Great parts man. He's grown and he now runs a whole wing of my business with me. He moved from Phoenix, Arizona to St. Louis to work for me. And when you have that kind of presence that you built with people that you trust and love, it just changes it. And that's what I'm all about.
Did you know that were the next steps always a part of the plan, or did the next steps show themselves and then you're like, okay, let's go down this road, let's open this up, is that how it worked, or did you already have this set in mind way before?
A mix of both. So there is the thought process early in my life that I'm going to own one, we're going to do these things, and it was finding the next challenge. So the next step kept coming along in the business that I was running, but I was also learning how to do these other things. I read an incredible volume of books to try and train my brain or learn how businesses work, how people work, how do you work with people, all of those things that were just necessary to build that business the way you wanted it to be. And then I got to know people who owned businesses, and I got to know investors, and I got to know groups, and I asked them a lot of questions, and I got really close to them, and I just dug into their brains to dig out the information I could, and I learned along the way. And it was just the knowledge, I think, in time. Like, what is wisdom? It's time of experiences, right? It's all of your experiences coming together to form wisdom. And so all of those experiences and questions that I'd asked and the things that I'd drawn out of that led me to a point where I knew when it was time to go buy one. I knew how to do it. I knew how to build those banking relationships. I knew what it took to get things done the right way. And I was willing and tolerant of the risk because I gave up a company where I worked for 23 years, chief operating officer. They overpaid me. I was really good at it. It was an easy job that I could do with my hands behind my back because I knew everyone there had been there 23 years. I'd built it up. I gave that up to go risk all the money that we had. Like I told Melody, so we're going to take every dime we have and put it in this business. She said, is that smart? And I said, I don't know, but it's the next step.
The smart thing is to chill out as the COO and wait on the CEO job.
Yeah.
But we're not built like that.
I'm not built like that. And there were other things that were coming along. It was just time.
Yeah.
And so my brain was the next step, and that's what I did.
Cool.
I may answer your question. I'm trying.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, that's perfect.
So you mentioned something along the way is I had somebody tell me this along my journey as well, is a man or a woman that is on a journey to learn creates people around them that are incredibly interested in that person's journey. And then they become lifelong people that help you in the business sector and that you can bounce ideas off of. And then you get people that you're building into that same relationship skill is building into your VPs, the people that are going to run the company, which frees you up time to do what you need to do, which is think and strategize about the business.
What you just said that's a ton of wisdom, right?
It is.
Absolutely.
It takes a while to figure it out. And I think one of the things that I was going to ask you is the mention of that journey, right? So we run into the wrong people a lot of time.
Right?
Yeah. And there's a few of those. I've got plenty in my background. I know Chris has got plenty in your background. Do you have one instance where you're like, damn, that was a lesson, but I can't regret it because it's something that I learned from?
Yeah.
And you don't have to mention names, obviously.
I won't. I told you I was going to put my goal in building the business up and in timing was in a couple of years to get a couple of VPs, right? And then transfer to them. I chose the wrong one in one of those.
How far did you go?
I let him have a lot of reign. And in all truthfulness of how that worked out, he was not being truthful with me. And my team, we were still early. They were scared to tell me the truth. Mm-hmm. And so what you learn also in business is you need the people to just tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Right? Just tell me how it is.
Yeah.
I'll help you. We'll be calm about it. And they have to trust that you'll be calm about it and that you're there to fix it. Yeah. And if they do, they'll tell you things. But when the other person is giving them the don't you tell Robin thing, it's very difficult. And so we had to make a big change. Mm-hmm. And this is true of big companies. And you'll learn this, right? You have to be really careful about who you place at the high levels. Yeah. Because every employee has a ripple effect in your company. Every employee does. Doesn't matter. Even if they're a tech or whatever, if you eliminate them or you have to fire them or they quit or whatever, it creates a ripple effect. But the higher they are in the company and the structure and the larger you are, the bigger the wave and it's ugly. Yeah. And so, I had to learn those lessons and I think I maybe should have asked better questions and recognized different things. And so all of those things are just things you got to walk away with and go, man, that was a dumbass mistake. But I'm going to learn from it and do something different next time. That's part of it.
Did it incorporate policy changes?
No.
Deeper
relationships made me realize that I needed to flatten the organization a little bit, that we needed to have more open communication from my side with those groups that were, instead of just trusting one person, make sure that I was flattening them and giving everyone a voice. Mm-hmm. It was a tough lesson for me.
I see. So more meetings, more one-on-ones kind of thing. Listening.
Yeah. More of not letting it just be their conversations, but spending time. Yeah. You have to learn. That's another thing. You have to learn where to place your time.
That is that statement. If I repeated something for the rest of my life, that's it. Is how do you place your time? How do you partition your time? Because that's sending a signal to others that you respect your time when you're available, how you can do things, what's important to you. All of those things precede you when you respect your own time.
That's right.
So it's an incredible piece of wisdom, Robin.
Yeah, and you got to give them the time. Yeah. And because this is what I also hadn't learned, because everyone's different. And as I came up the ranks, I was the one who wasn't afraid to go knock on the CEO door.
Sure.
I was the one who wasn't afraid to go knock on the chief operating officer's door and say, dude, we got a problem. But you realize not everyone is like that. It doesn't mean that they're not capable. They're not great at what they do. They're just not like that.
Don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah. And so you have to make the space, the time for them to have that opportunity, or it doesn't happen because they're reluctant. And I'll just say this, it's not a knock, but it's just if they have a military background, they see that chain of command thing is so, and you got to kind of break that out of them because they've learned so many great habits from the military and certain things you need to just knock out of them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting, that's part of building people and growing people and stretching them.
Mm-hmm. That's why people, and it's funny. I was in the business of hiring people for 17 years. I built multiple organizations. The big thing, and the people they chose to stay away from military background because they find it so challenging to break down what they had already learned. And the structure. And corporations do not work like that.
Right.
We depend on opinions, ideas, and putting those ideas in the right places. And in the military, that's not what you're taught.
Correct. But they become great if you just have to retrain.
The trust is there.
You have to know, I got to retrain this. Yeah, the other competencies that they learned are fantastic, but some things need to be adjusted. And it's true of every person. You have to learn, what do they have, where do they come from, what's the background that's creating their things that are holding them back. And then your role as a leader is to teach them out, coach them out of those things, build them up, and use them for what their core skill set. Because we all have this, right? You're built differently than the next guy, and you got to find that thing in them that's great. And when you can find the thing in them that's great and get them in a position that allows them to use the thing that they're great at, they're just happy.
They're unstoppable.
And you're happy. Exactly.
They're unstoppable.
So if you said, hey, Robert, how do you build a great business? That's how I would do it. Like, that's how and it works every time. Every time.
So how do you find the time from 19 weeks on the road? How do you find the time to have those meetings with people and all that stuff? You're
FaceTime.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm going to say it comes in two stages. The first is I did the same thing on our No Prep Kings, No Prep Elite team that I talked about in business, right? We're going to build a great team. We're going to get them built up. We're going to let them do what they got to do. And then at some point, and I didn't know this, the business was growing too. And so I had the business growing here, the racing doing this, like both were climbing. And the business was going crazy. And the last year, they've just grown enough to where I kind of just give them the reins. Like my guy Brian and my guy Alan, that car, everything they do on the car, everything they take care of, I show up. And I'm going to say this too. I've become the guy I used to not like.
Really?
Yeah. I've become the guy
that sits in the cars.
Yeah. The guy who flies in late. Comes to the track like he's gung-ho, ready to go.
Here comes the driver.
This guy owns the car and he's the driver. Like, okay, this guy used to think, that guy's a dumbass. And really, the honest answer, the truth of that is just, I've become that guy. I fly in late on Thursday because I got to work and get everything. There's so much we're in the middle of. And then Friday I get up and I usually am on the laptop or on calls or whatever, because luckily we do not race until the afternoon, but we have to start meeting fans at 1 or 2, and I love to do that.
Yeah.
So I spend my morning getting caught up, and then Friday but here's what it kills then, right? Our weekends. My wife and I, 19 weekends of the year, when we should be hanging with grandkids, doing stuff, doing church things and the stuff that we're very involved in, we're racing.
You're in a race car.
Yeah, we're in a race car. We're making races and we're trying to win things. And so building up that team to be capable of doing that. And then here's how I learned this. Years ago, I watched an interview with Dale Earnhardt. And they said, Dale, what do you love to do? He said, I love to fish. Here's what I do. And they said, well, how do you find time to fish when you're NASCAR racing all year and you're doing this and you're very involved in your program? He said, I compress time. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when we get done racing Daytona, there's a helicopter sitting in Daytona Speedway. I get on the helicopter, it flies me straight to the lake where there are 3 guides sitting at a boat dock. I get off the helicopter, I go down there and I interviews the guides, and then I get in with the one that I think has the best opportunity to take me to the best fishing, and we go fishing.
Love
and
that.
then they bring me out and I get on the helicopter and I go home, and I thought, well, someday.
So do you have a helicopter?
No, not yet. But the business is doing well enough. You never know. Someday maybe we'll be able to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's just you don't think about that kind of progression unless you've seen people who have done it. You need experiences from the wisdom of those people who have done it, and hearing that wisdom from Dale Earnhardt, it was like, because like I said, it's not the guy I always wanted to be. I loved working on my car. I still do. It's very relaxing for me. I don't have time.
Yeah. Same.
Well, your time is better proportion than other souls, right?
9 grandkids, 7 daughters, beautiful wife, families, and extended, and then the business.
Then you have that
500
extended
people.
family. You have that extended family.
Right. And so racing has really become, that's a pastime. It can't be my primary thing to do, or everything else suffers. And sometimes, so building that team to where the race team doesn't suffer. In fact, now Brian and Alan, honestly, they can do it way better than I ever could have. And so they're just great. And now I'm that driver.
Got a follow-up question to that.
Sure.
So you listen to Earnhardt. I love the compressed time. I've never seen that interview, but I subscribe to the same thing. It's like we compress time. When did you value your time enough to spend the money to compress it? Because it costs money to compress time.
Yeah, it really came this year.
Okay.
Yeah, it really came this year where it was just, and I've learned lessons through this racing experience all along the way that made me step up or change our program or bring somebody on to extend it. Or in the case of Alan, to say, no, Alan, you've got to become the tuner. Like, you just have to. We can't have this, professional tuner thing going on like everybody else. You've got to do it. You got to do it with us. And he just took to it like a duck to water. Now he's I think he's the baddest guy out there. But, you just build the guys up behind you so that you can compress that time. But I didn't know. I got lucky, I guess, because I didn't plan it that way. It just worked out to where now I can do this. And hopefully, and the business is growing, if things happen like we projected, and it's crazy what is projected and what we're trying to do, I'll be the guy who has the jet that flies in the morning and races and gets on the jet Saturday night and goes home. I don't know how else to do it. It's terrible. Not terrible. It's a positive position to be in that makes you sound like that guy.
Well, you get the haters, right?
Oh,
so
I got a few.
Yeah, when you start to compress your time, and social media does us all a favor, by the way.
That's great.
Because they see the pretty pictures, right? Tori put this up the other day. Don't mind the pretty pictures, man. It's all the sausage making that goes on behind it that most people don't see, and so that's where your haters come from, right?
Absolutely.
And it's funny, man. I've watched Street Outlaws, No Prep. I've seen you on the street, seen you on the track, all that kind of good stuff. And it's you guys are hard on each other.
Oh,
Jesus, man.
Yeah.
I thought we were like rough on each other, but these guys are not. Stop. So I will tell you something about Chris. Like Chris is, he's a lot like you in an earlier stage where he just doesn't have time, and he's really never even seen an episode.
I haven't.
Well, you didn't miss much. It's a lot of fun. And look, I street raced. That's where I came up. And that's what drew me to it. And the fact that I watched those guys on the internet and we talked trash a little bit to each other, and so we just kind of knew them before because we were popular for street racing crews that were on the West Coast. And then these guys pop up in Oklahoma, right? And this TV show goes nuts.
Yeah.
Nobody expected that. I street raced when no one cared. No one cared. We were but every city, a little group on the internet talked trash and they cared.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I just never followed up. And that's just because when I go home, the last thing I want to do is see people walk on and talk about cars.
But your day is that, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I think people don't understand either. I have people say to me, well, when are you going to quit and do this full time? Or when are you going to retire and do this full time? And I always think, like, first off, then that makes it a job.
Yeah.
Right now is my passion and fun. Like, like I've got enough of a job. My wife for a while was, I'm tired. I need to go work. I'm like, no, you don't need to work. I got enough job for both of us. Help just make the house manage. And she did. And she's done a great job. But, you got to just get to a point where I can't do that all day long. It doesn't work. You're going to have something that feels like passion.
Fun.
Yeah, fun.
So what made the transition from work to race cars? How did these two start to become a business?
What's really great about that? I started street racing, built it up. I ran in Hot Rod Magazine deals when that was popular. Hot Rod Magazine was the internet before the internet, right? Like that's what everybody knew. And then we did really well. And then I took a couple years off when we had 4 daughters in high school at the same time.
Ooh.
Okay, so I just stopped. Like, we didn't race for 5 years. And then during that time, the TV show comes on and takes off. But I knew all those people.
So how did you know them, by the way?
It was because we were street racers and we talked trash on the internet.
The internet.
Midwest street cars.
Gotcha.
Things like that were. And so, I'm in Phoenix, but I was also a Pontiac guy, right? Pretty big Pontiac. I was the most well-known Pontiac guy before the other new well-known Pontiac guy,
right?
Long Chief.
Yeah.
Right?
Justin, yeah.
And so we got to, Justin Shear. So we get to know each other a little bit. He'd call me on occasion for tech advice. I call him. Like, it kind of goes back and forth. We met at PRI once to have dinner. Just never think it would be a big deal. And he said, you need to get a car. And so at that time, I just bought the business and was, starting to do this. Was doing the right things. And to me, I looked at it as, I wonder how this would be as marketing for the business and taking my passion, what I love to do. Let's see if we can kind of mold that together. And it just happened to me that the timing worked out for me. And so you ask, well, how did you put that together? Well, this is an incredible opportunity for me and our company to be well known. When my salespeople go into a job site or go on to a place and they've got a Central Power thing, the most common thing they get asked is, hey, is that the Street Outlaw guy? Like, it's a connection, and it works really, really well. It gets them past the gatekeeper, I guess you'd say. Gets them in. I mean, we still have to do our job, right? But they get past the gate, and that's a part of that's just been really good for the business too. I mean, when we go put on trade shows like or even we go put on tech, where we're recruiting at UTI, they know it.
Yeah. Well, that's a crowd, man. That's a crowd.
Exactly.
Those are wrench turners, man.
And those are the guys I need. I want the guy who's creative. He's a wrench turner. He's a farm kid who loves streetcars. They're going to be the best techs in the world. I got a whole bunch of them that'll tell you that's true.
Yeah.
It was serendipitous.
That was a long
right?
answer, but
serendipitous.
It all say it's like a molding, an unbelievable melding of things that work together.
Right. How's your faith pour into that? So knowing what you know, right?
Yeah.
That you're seeing it serendipitously just come together.
Yeah. My faith has grown over the years, and I think that's a journey everybody goes on. And I went through one where I learned faith lessons and grew through things, and I've led men's ministries for many years and built things up. And then I get exposed here where suddenly I have over 50,000 followers on Facebook or whatever, right? And you get a chance to talk and say things to people that you would never get a chance to say.
Or maybe unpopular.
Yeah, or unpopular. Yeah, and to a crowd who never gets to hear them.
Right.
And so I've tried in my faith and my love for God just to be who I am and let them see it. And sometimes you get backlash for that. And sometimes we get the opposite too. We were in Michigan a couple weeks ago. I'm trying not to tear up. This guy comes up in the lanes, and it's a first pass. We're going to come up for a test pass. We roll up, sitting in the car, waiting on the side of it. Here comes this guy. Got to be in his late 60s. He's not fit or anything like that. He
weathered.
Yeah, weathered. Got his little hat on. He says, "Hey, I want to tell you something." He said, and I just before we rolled up there, I said to Melody, "I don't know what this is all about when it comes to us." We were having that conversation.
Man, that's a deep one too.
Yeah, here we are burning all this time, missing our ability to build ministries back home. Like, I don't know if is this where we're supposed to be? I'm not kidding you. 5 minutes later, we're rolled up to the lanes. This guy comes up, and he begins to tell me how impacted he was by hearing my story and seeing my sermons and things like that, and how it changed his life, and now he's back to church, and how he thought it was all about materialism and things, but he saw it differently, and and even in his life said, "I even see my life differently." He just tells me this story. My wife's sitting in the push car, and she hears it, and he gets done, and he's cried and whatever, and he moves on, and it's just incredibly moving. Where you're like, okay, I guess we're reaching people who no one else can ever reach.
Zero.
And through that, of course, if you're gonna do something, you're gonna create haters and fans. And so we've created haters and fans, but to have impact on guys like that, and we get at least, I'd say probably on average, one of those stories per race where somebody comes up and has that, maybe not that deep of a level, but something where they express. And my fans come up to me and they say, sign this. And when they walk away, an inordinate number of them say, God bless you.
Yeah.
And that, I know that isn't what they say to the other racers.
Yeah.
I just know it isn't. And so I know, hey, they know who we are. They've been able to see who we are. And that just feels to me like ministry.
You're on mission, dude.
Yeah.
You are on
Feels like
mission,
a mission.
man. You are.
And look, I'm not the perfect administrator of that mission. I've done some dumb things.
Well,
I've
out of
said
the
some
12,
things.
who were?
Good point. Good point. You're right. And that's a fantastic point.
There's no one. There's no one, man. I mean, even the worst of the worst, right?
So what did Isaiah said? Isaiah, who struggled, right, said, "Here I am, send me. Here am I."
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
It's beautiful.
It's a big
man.
part of it.
It is. And what I equate that back to, I was like, man, I've always been a fan of yours because you've kept, you have an executive presence around you. I've been around executives my entire life. I'm one myself. And one of the things is you have a presence about you, but you're also not afraid to open that door, right?
Mm-hmm. No,
and
I'm not.
you mentioned that you had, 50,000 followers on Facebook, but what did you do when your daughter expressed a need and want to dedicate her life to Christ?
And we dropped everything, went and did it.
Isn't that crazy?
It's just,
Where did you stop? Like, I saw it was in a pond somewhere.
yeah. So we built a pond behind our house.
Yeah.
And we baptized we here if you said, "Hey, Robin, what is the most positive thing you've done as a family?"
Yeah.
I'm going to say this right here. All 7 of our daughters love God, and all 7 have been baptized.
Wow.
Now they're all in different journeys of how they're experiencing that and working through it. And I know from my life that you work through it and upset, like it does the stock market cycle, right? Okay, sometimes I'm not doing terrible and I'm doing great, but up and to the right.
Yeah.
That's the goal of faith, and it's the goal of following Jesus. And I want to do that.
That's
And I want to help people do that. And my family has come along because we put those things as most important. We put that as number one. And I would drop a race to go do that for my girls.
Kind of have to, man.
Yeah.
And here's some feedback, dude. I don't know that enough people know that about you.
Yeah, so social media is a crazy thing.
Well, its haters are louder than the others.
Absolutely. Who are the loudest ones, right? And then some people say like, oh, all these negative comments, and I'll say, well, there are 700 likes. Those guys just aren't going to say.
They're not going to say a word, dude.
And so, and also people are very unforgiving. They're very unforgiving.
Mm-hmm.
If you say, okay, what is mankind like? Are they forgiving or are they unforgiving? Well, they're unforgiving. And so you see that on the internet, because they can say something and say things to you. And what is the old meme? And not get punched in the mouth. And not that I would punch them out, like obviously Jesus, but I'd think about it. Yeah. So there's this point of where you just have to move on, do what you do, and let people fall where they may, and hope the ones that hear it, and since there are those that hear it, that's what matters. Mm-hmm. That's what matters.
That's and I get wrapped up in that a lot, as well as, I'm being loud enough. Because there's days where you catch me and I'm not the guy to represent guys.
No, me too.
And then there's days where if I find you, I'm going to tell you every single thing I can about it.
Yeah.
And the in-between days are the days that are most. Yeah. And those are the days that I try to control what I do and how I'm a light that day.
That social media part of it, because I know that the primary thing that people come to see me do is be the race car guy, right? Mm-hmm. Then they get to hear about my business a little bit. That's fine. But they're also going to hear a little bit about Jesus and who I am. But you have to be tempered in that. So I don't just, like, my Facebook page isn't just all that. Mm. But every now and then, sprinkle in a sermon, sprinkle in a verse or something, because you're just planting a seed to help reach people and grow them. It's certainly, I think if you did it the opposite, and I've seen people do it, you drive people away, and you're trying to be the messenger that brings them. They come to see the race car.
You're a salesman.
Not a salesman as much as you are a promoter.
You feel like a salesman or a promoter at some point. Tucker Carlson said it just right. He said, I'm skeptical of people that wear it on their sleeve because it feels more like a sales pitch.
Yeah. Ryan Martin asked me one time about it. We were having a conversation about how the race team fit in that and how my church life was. Mm-hmm. And he asked me then, about that, and I said, Ryan, here's the deal. Like, I'm not going to be like pushing it in your face, but I'm not going to run from it either. If you're around me long enough, you'll hear about it. And hopefully, more importantly, I hope you see it through me. And that's harder.
Yes.
Because we fail and we struggle too, right? I mean, I struggle and struggle to do things right all of the time. You make mistakes.
Yep.
But life is about moving on from your mistakes and growing in your journey and in everything. Like here, I just made a mistake this weekend. It cost me. But if you let those things hang on you and weigh you down, one, you're going to be miserable. And two, you're not going to be good even for the people around you.
Yeah. What message?
You just have to learn your lesson, lick your wounds, move on.
Yep.
Few questions on that.
Sure.
Have you ever thought of a social media page specifically to reaching what you feel is lacking?
Yeah, I have thought about that.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to do something like that. I've kind of take my patience and being patient in the timing of those things. Yeah, there's one of your
There's your editor. There's the editor going.
So the patience in putting that together and doing it at the right time. I'm working toward that. In fact, I have a pastor that I just brought on in our little church couple here just first of the year, and him and I have talked a lot about that. We have very wildly different experiences, but we also have similar experiences and a similar love for Jesus that we're going to figure out how to make that promotion a little better.
When was the change? Were you always born and raised in a religious background, or was there a catalyst in life?
I think that's a great question. It's the best question you'll ask me all day. Oh boy. So I'm going to say things about my early life, and if I do, I want you to hear this, not forget this part.
Okay.
My mother is not the same person she was when I was a child. Okay.
Okay.
And so I was a product in the 60s of my mom. She said she should have danced longer at her junior prom. Okay. Now, her father was the deacon of a Baptist church. A pregnant woman, junior in high school in the 60s.
Deacon.
Whose father's the deacon of the Baptist church in a town of 500 people. Sets the picture.
Yep.
Right? Ostracized. Her and my father got married. Neither of them were ready to be married, nor were they ready to be parents. So it didn't last long. And my mom ends up in Wichita, Kansas, which isn't a big city, but it's a big enough city to find trouble. And she found some trouble, and I was a child who got packed around through that and had some very negative experiences. And the truth is, I only knew one good man in my entire life at that time, and that was my grandfather. And I only knew, the thing that I knew most about him was that he was a Baptist and he loved Jesus. And I'll never forget the little school buses on Sunday that would come around and pick up people. This was in the 70s, so world was different. They would come around to the neighborhoods and pick up people and take them to church.
Yep.
And I was a kid, 6 years old, who would go out and get on the bus and go to church. It was the only place I saw normal people. It was the only place I saw where people loved each other. I mean, they're obviously not perfect either, but that experience of never left me. Even though in my later years I walked away for a while and did crazy things and came back. Like, it always came back to, where you find good people? Over here.
Yeah.
And so kept coming back and growing and learning. And, it wasn't long before, I say long, my third grade, fourth grade year, my mom got in some trouble and they shipped me out to Western Kansas where my dad was, which happened to be near my grandfather. And so later my mom would come out and we'd reconnect. And so I went from this inner city, Wichita, almost all black grade school to a town of 500 people. And that was an incredible life change. Maybe it taught me how to deal and to adapt, but it was a great experience in life. It turned out to be a great experience in life. But my father was the deacon of the church. I would go, my grandfather, and we'd spend time, and I just learned all those things, and they never left me.
So your picture of a family is the church.
I know it is.
Yeah. See, that's cool, man.
I know it is, because even the word, let's preach for just a second.
Go right ahead.
The word ecclesia, church, means people. It's like a gathering. It's meant to be more of a political thought process, right? There's people who think the same thing, and they're all together. That's a church. The church is not, people drive into a town and they look and they go, oh, there's a church. No, that's a building.
That's a building with a cross on it.
Yes, the church is the people inside of it, and they don't need a building to be a church. And so, it's a very interesting thought process, but that's what my life kind of geared itself around. So it's a long answer to your question, but I'm glad you asked it.
Yeah. So did the lifestyle that you had growing up of it also play into how successful you are in business and that thought process? Because I don't know if it's necessarily genetics or if it's in a childhood upbringing that makes us business-minded people think differently than others.
It's trauma.
Yeah, it was a trauma, but also it was the overcoming the trauma.
That's what I meant is not the actual trauma, but it's the byproduct of trauma.
And I'll say it was two things, and I'm going to give, it was genetics a little bit. Okay. My father is a good businessman and a very smart guy. I mean, he's great at building relationships. And my mom and her stability, I think I got both of those genetic. My mom figured it out later and got stability, but those two genetic things coming together were helpful. And then the process of that learning experience, the trauma, going out to and overcoming it. And I think, here's another one that's interesting. I always thought I was behind when I started in business because I would be competing for roles or building up the company with people who had, super degrees in calculus or whatever. And I was raised in a school, little bitty high school, 48 people in the entire high school, 4 grades.
Wow.
Where we didn't have any special classes like that. And I was just always behind, I thought. And then I realized later, oh, you know what? I'm ahead. And here's why. I didn't have the education that those guys had. I dropped out of college. I followed my mom and dad's footsteps. I had a daughter when I was 20, right? I drop out of school, I pick it up, I get back in business. And what I realized was all of the lessons from that small town of how to deal with other types of people and how to mend relationships were huge. Because I think in the big schools, if you get mad at somebody or whatever, you can just get another one. You have your best friend, you get another.
Separate lunch times.
Yeah. Or you have I'm in this group. I'm a jock. I'm a nerd. Well, in my high school, everybody was everything.
Yeah, you pissed somebody off. You had to see them every day.
Yeah, and your best friend, Tony Smith, one of my best friends ever, right? When we got mad at each other, well, I had to go make up with Tony because there wasn't another guy to go get as a best friend. It's just Tony. And so you had to go mend relationships, and you learned how to mend relationships and deal with people older, younger, different thought processes, and it just made me more rounded in the ability to build relationships that I would have never learned in a big school. And so, or with a family that didn't have to work through things, right? I had to work through things with my mother and come to forgiveness and things that normal people don't have to do that just built me up.
Being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
See,
absolutely.
That's it, and I'm glad you brought that up. I really am, because, in the 17 years that, I was fortunate enough to meet all walks, right? Executive leaders from all different parts and different companies, from GM, Chrysler, the rest of these things. They all have a similar pedigree, which is they are the byproduct of having to deal with things at an age in which most people don't deal with them.
And they overcame
it. They don't let it define them.
That's right.
And in fact, they take and they are able to help other people with that same stuff.
That's right.
So with 7 daughters that are growing up in a different life than you have, how do you carry over the same teachings?
Ooh, they'll tell you, and I think they're right. I'm kind of hard on them.
Yeah.
They didn't get gifts. They didn't get I'm not going to create trust fund babies.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that. And so I think here are a couple things along the way. If you're going to be in our house, you do what we do. We go to church on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And some in my family would be kind of like, are you sure you're making them do that? And I said, no. Hey, when they get old to do their own thing, they can do their own thing. But right now with us, they do what we do, and this is what their parents do, and this is who we are. And so there were times when I think I was, maybe I questioned, am I too hard on them? And now I look back on it, and I think we did the right things.
Good. What's an example?
Oh, well, that one, right? Yeah, we go,
Church.
this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is who we are as a family. That's a big example. I think also being real with them, that's different than I see most parents do. Like, we made them do the tough things. We didn't cover for certain things that they would do. We coached them out of it. But too many people today, number one, when their kids have trouble in school, they go in and they blame the teacher.
Oh my God, dude.
Right?
Yep.
It's probably, maybe it is the teacher.
My mom did that, and I tell you, it was I played into it.
Yeah.
I did,
Huh.
and it was terrible.
Mm.
It welled up this terrible person because she literally would attack those folks, in defense of her son, which I was clearly in the wrong. And I learned a lot from that. And I have the same practice is we look internal first. And then externally, we go out, and if there's accountability, then we show accountability first in hopes that we have accountability around us.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the perception on, like, my boys, for instance, people think I'm hard on them. No, I'm just teaching them what life's going to do to them.
Exactly. And I think I can look back on those things with the kids and know that I should have done some things differently. I worked too hard. I spent too many hours. I was too involved in the business. Being raised the way I was, I never woke up one day saying, man, I want to be rich. But I went to bed every night saying, I desperately do not want to be poor. And so, it drove me. It drove me into this too intense and didn't spend enough time with them when they were young. And I made some promises to them to later in my life, I'm going to spend the time with their kids that I couldn't with them. And we're working on that. So,
Yeah, I think we discount how resilient kids are.
Oh, and they're tough. I mean, and they learned lessons, and they saw my work ethic. It wasn't bad. It maybe just I could have done better.
Yeah, I wonder that too. If later on, the children will see, okay, I get what Dad was doing, and why he was doing it when they hit that age.
I hope so.
When they've got their kids that now they need to feed, and they're like, okay, I don't want to wake up and be poor.
I don't want to be poor.
Yeah.
To where I have to make a decision if my kid gets to eat over me.
Yeah.
Right. So I wonder if that would ever happen, and I hope some days that it would.
I think we're seeing it. I mean, they've taken on and done some good things in life. I'm proud of what my girls have done. They're all productive members of society. And I think when you have 7, that's about,
wow, dude.
they're all productive members of society. And I'll also say this, like, I didn't have any sons. Now I do. We have incredible son-in-laws.
Yeah, you've got son-in-laws.
Oh my gosh. And so, I'm so proud of those guys. They're men, and I've also brought them in the men's ministry, kind of worked on them, but I'm harder on them sometimes than I am the daughters too, where they're supposed to be the man of the house.
Well, dude,
and I drive them to that.
They're your family. So
exactly.
You mentioned it earlier. Is like, hey, if you're going to be a part of what we're doing, this is what we do.
And that's how I treat the daughters and their son-in-laws and the grandchildren too. I mean, it's just, and not treat, because that sounds like that's maybe not the right word, but that's how my expectations of.
How was the introductions to the boyfriends?
Oh,
so do you have like a particular one that was messy?
Yeah, they're all messy, but messy in different ways. I have this thing I did with all of them.
Yeah.
Right? your boyfriends, your whatever, they don't exist until they meet me.
Ooh.
Right? I don't want to hear about it. We don't talk about it until they're good enough that you can bring them to meet me. They don't exist. And so that kind of set the early tones. Like one time, one kid called, "Hey, can I talk to Paige?" I said, "Is it about school?" I said, No. And I said, "Dunk." She comes to me 10 minutes later. She's like, "Hey, so-and-so called." I'm like, "Well,
I don't know.
Wasn't anything to talk about.
I don't
man.
know this guy.
Right." And so son-in-laws, I did the same thing. This is a good story. Every one of them, I do this. They come, I said, they have to ask me to marry you. Until then, they don't get a blessing, right? So they all come to me and talk to me. And we take a walk. This is what I just termed it. Right? We just take a walk.
Sure.
And the walk looks like this. I'm going to tell you everything about that girl. Everything. I know her better than you do. I've known her longer than you have. I know where she's broken. I know where she's great. We're going to take a walk, and I'm going to tell you everything. Because this is no deposit, no return. You're going to buy into this girl, and you're not going to say to me, "Well, I didn't know that." Oh, yes,
yeah, you
did. Because I told you. And the daughters are all great, but just like us, they have pieces that aren't as good as others, right? We all have these things. This is where I'm great at. Here's where I'm not. And so I take a walk with them, and I tell them, and I ask them questions like, "Are you ready to deal with this for 50 years? Oh, yeah. Okay, remember that. And so we just have these conversations about the seriousness of what it is to be married. And you're accepting the other's faults and flaws. And I always tell them at the end of it, I say, now, if you expect any of this to change, you're marrying the wrong person.
I was about to say that. It was funny you mentioned that. I was like, 'cause I hope he's going to close with that. Is marriage being it's a continual acceptance of another person, and that's that's the way Christ sees it, right?
Yeah, there's a book called When Sinners Marry, because both are sinners, right? Both are broken in different ways. My wife is fantastic; she's perfect, almost. I got to deal with the other problems. You have the things in that person. I say that because you're sitting there. But the point is, you have the things in the other person that you have to accept because perfection is not going to exist. Oh, I'm going to go find a perfect woman. Oh, good luck.
Yeah.
Because you're not a perfect husband and you never will be. So you're two imperfect people growing into a relationship that you've said, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I commit to you for the rest of my life and I will never take another. And I think that too many, if you said, hey, what's a problem with society today? That is missing.
Oh, thousands.
That commitment is missing. And so it bleeds over into harming our children who are raised in fatherless households. And that just creates this loss and this hole in people their entire lives that they never get back because they don't have the value of a father who builds them.
What better person to explain that than yourself?
Oh, I'm not great.
Maybe this guy.
I don't know about that.
It's tough, dude.
It is.
It really is. I was fortunate enough to have, both of my parents growing up, and it was a pretty good atmosphere. But at the end of the day, I had friends that were single parent, and they were different kids, man.
They were,
and it was like, hey, what's your dad do, or what's your mom do, or something like that. But it was always a little bit different. So I really like that statement. Is growing out without one of your parents, there's so much that you miss.
Yeah, and I think the family is most harmed by missing a father. And today in modern society, the fathers walk away. Well, they leave it to the mother.
And I think we're painted in a light as well.
Most often, not always.
As we're optional.
Absolutely. And the culture is taught that, right? Oh, well, women can take it all. And not valuing that both are the best scenario.
Yeah.
And understanding neither is better without the other. It's a two-part thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, statistically, that's
51%, right?
Yeah, and there's more troubled kids with a single mother than there is with kids that have both parents.
The Wall Street Journal did a huge article years ago in this big study, and it broke down all the demographics. So it was looking at, racial profiles to say, who is poor, right? And what causes this? And then when they overlaid all these other statistics on top of the races to try and determine what was the cause, the one thing that was exactly identical was the percentage of fatherless households was identical to the percentage of in poverty.
Wow.
Black, white, Asian. Why were Asians the lowest? Lowest number of fatherless households.
Interesting. I wonder if that's a cultural thing.
I don't know. You could go into a lot of what caused it, but the truth is, not having a father is the largest predictor of you will be in poverty.
100%. That I've seen that article that came out, and that's what I was referring to, the culture change in that. Is it driven politically, or was it the absence of God?
I think absence of God, absolutely. I mean, you break down the fact that marriage now is so optional, right? What's the pressure to be married now? None. So what's your pressure to commit? It doesn't happen. Now, I'll preach for just a second, right? But if you've just taken all of what God intended for sexuality and you've driven it to this place where it's just unimportant. It has no boundaries or bearings, or it is not done with the intent of, oh, we're going to be married and committed forever. It's just willy-nilly, we just do whatever. And it creates then these fatherless situations.
Yeah.
And it's a societal move that's happened, and today there's a low percentage of people who are couples who are married, and it continues to drop. The marriage rate continues to drop. Yeah. And I think it's a real problem in society because there's no commitment to the family.
Dude, and I see it more. I mean, I'm 48, so...
Youngster.
Yeah, I know. I'll go into that in a little bit, but I see it more now is... So you mentioned political. You mentioned that the lack of spirituality, God, Jesus in the household, but I also has something to do with economic pressures, because you have people partnering now, because they cannot afford to live alone.
Well, you could say that, but I also think it is the lack of like they weren't. It's not important to them to do what is right in the eyes of God first. In other words, be married before they're partnered,
right,
and be fully committed. And so they get into these, what they think are just, well, we're going to just live together and figure it out. And this is another one. The statistical rates of divorce for people who lived together before they got married are identical.
They're crazy.
It doesn't help. It doesn't make any difference. If you're committed or you're not committed. So I went on a little bit of a preaching rant for you. But there's your, that's what I think. If you say, is it political, the point of, I think everything they're doing in politics is to try and fix what this creates.
I think it can go hand in hand. I think it's a little bit of political and a little bit of the absence of God. If politically they're trying to strip away masculinity,
correct,
in men,
that is true.
Okay, but if you look at the same token in the Bible, it has a very specific job that men are supposed to do.
That's correct.
And then we've stripped that. They've taken that from us and said, people have to be equal in this, and the men can't be masculine and saying, I want to go out and provide for you, because now you're saying, well, the woman can't do that.
Correct.
Well, that's not what it is. It's in our genetics to be able to want that drive.
Yeah.
Right. So then when you strip that away from us, and it goes down even to, like I'm saying, the biblical part of it, it's been years and taught that that's what the responsibility of a man is supposed to be.
Correct.
And so when we don't do that, then...
Who suffers? The family.
The family suffers. And so the men are like, well, I'm gone.
Yeah. Optional.
Right. It's like, I'm going to leave and go somewhere where I can feel a part of something or responsible for something because it's being stripped.
The woman has been taught you don't need the man. The man has been taught you don't have a direct responsibility to that family. You can go do whatever. Both, and that's a political thing that is trying to be covered by these situations that are not right.
And I think if you bring the biblical aspect of it back into politics, if you want,
agreed.
Then some of this should be able to start to rectify itself.
Right.
And then start holding people accountable for it. you know?
Well, I mean, you have to teach people to hold themselves accountable.
Yeah,
You can't legally make someone accountable to take care of their family, a man.
But you have to make it so unbelievably uncomfortable for them not to by setting an example for the rest of the men around them to do that.
Right.
I'll give you a perfect example. I moved in with my now wife before we got married, out of economic pressure. The men that came around me from my church were so unbelievably, like, the pressure. Hey, we understand that you've got to be in this position, but let's separate bedrooms. Let's separate this. Let's pull all of this out. And you know what? As a guy that, you know, was in a relationship with a woman, that was the last thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Did I do it? Did I remain abstinent for that entire year? Absolutely.
You know, that is something that most society would fight back against and say, no way, I'm done.
I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I couldn't.
Right.
Because of the men in my ministry.
There you go. But good men held you accountable
They wouldn't stop.
to something positive that you couldn't see at the time, but would make a positive impression upon your relationship.
Yep.
And upon your future.
My
with your
boys.
wife. Yeah, and your boys for the rest of their life.
Yep. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Just a few guys. And they weren't married either. That's
well,
the messed up part.
Yeah.
They are now. They're married now, but it was unbelievable. It felt like love. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, they were giving you great wisdom
Yes.
that you couldn't at that time absorb, but now you see it.
Good point. Dude, I want to move on to some cars.
Yeah, ask me some car questions. I'm ready for that. I love it.
What was the first one? Like the first one that turned Robin Roberts on, and let's not talk about the 72 Challenger.
Okay.
Probably wasn't it.
No, it was the first car.
No, well, the first car that you raced.
That was the first car I ever raced.
Really?
Yeah.
He's a Mopar guy.
Yeah, I am. At heart, I am. You know why? Because have you ever seen Vanishing Point?
Okay.
Oh my gosh, Vanishing Point made me I wanted a Challenger model. Every time since I saw the movies as a kid, watched it late night on black and white TV, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a Challenger. So I did. But growing up in Kansas, I could drive since I was 14. And so we bought an old pickup, and that was the first thing I started tinkering with, right? And messing with it. And then you realize, well, pickups are too heavy and all this kind of stuff. And so we get me a Challenger. That was the next one. So next car I got was a Challenger. And I started building up that Challenger, and that's what we street raced. I would drive that from town to town in those little towns of Kansas.
Really?
And who's got the fastest car in town? And you know, I thought that car ran 11s because everyone outran. So, this car drag strip ran 11s. I don't think that car run 14. I mean,
I was like,
but
11.
everyone had a 10-second street car in their garage, and I could beat them all. And so, you know, this car's got to run 10. No, it wasn't even close. But you know, that was my beginning of passion into cars. My dad loved Pontiacs. I loved this Challenger, and back in that day, there was no internet, right? Mm-hmm. So I was looking through newspapers because that's how you did it,
right? To
find an ad, and in Dodge City, 1972 Challenger. I'm gonna go look at that thing. My dad's like, that's a Dodge. Yeah, I'm gonna go look at it. So I buy this car, bring it home, and never forget this. And it was just, and he learned it from one of my buddies. He opens the door, he looks in the back seat, and he says, "Oh, birth control seats."
Yeah.
Shuts the door, you know, 'cause it didn't work. But anyway, that was my Challenger.
I have a similar experience, but some town to town, you went calling out people with their 10-second street cars, the Camaros and everything in the garage.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So tell me how, okay, so you raced a bunch of GM products, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Chevelles, Novas, all kinds. My nemesis cars were, my buddy had a Little Love pickup, had another one with a Chevelle, had a guy with a Nova. Yeah, those were the ones that I always ran. It's the same we're doing today.
What motor was in the Challenger?
So I bought that car, and it was that guy had bought it to turn it into a drag car, and it had been custom ordered. So it was AC delete, slapstick shifter, 318 two-barrel, because he was going to pull the engine and put a Hemi in it.
Right.
He never did. RT hood. Awesome little car with just stripped out, which is perfect because I started immediately stripping it out, right? And so I then found a rolled 74 that had a 360 in it.
Nice.
Brought that home, ported the heads. I didn't know how to port heads, but I read Smokey Unick's Power Secrets book. And so I ported the heads, built up the transmission, put 430 gears in the back, all kinds of stuff. And
8th mile, quarter?
Back then we raced quarter.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the car wasn't that fast.
Well, it was a
Can't do
Hemi,
it today.
So you're having to stretch your legs a little bit.
Yeah, it was a 360 though. So, I just did all the things I thought I could then. And I mean, I had to buy a used cam. I was a poor kid. But I did a pretty good job building it up. It was pretty fast when we were done. I mean, yeah, back then.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
318 too.
No, 360. Yeah,
360.
Yanked that out.
Put that out. Went to the 360.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so you busted a few asses around Wichita.
Well, all over from Wichita west. That's when I was a kid.
So is that when your name started getting out there?
In that part of it, and we still talk about that. There's a group of us, William Glunt, Paul Lamb. We used to just race each other all the time. James Berman. I mean, these are names that we just
Local track guys.
Yeah, we became this. Well, not track guys. We were the local street guys, and that's what we did. And
Yeah.
it was great. It was fun.
You didn't have any problems finding roads in Kansas, did you?
No, or a straight flat road, no problem. Like, and I always look. So sometimes you're a product of your environment. Like, why did I get into drag racing? Well, because it started with street racing, and I'm from Kansas, so there was no road course. There was no windy road. Like, we raced on the straight, long, flat road because everything was a straight, long, flat road.
Between CRP land.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
I grew up in a coal mining town, so it was the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of straight, redone roads. They were a little humpy, though.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some issues. So you got your Challenger.
Yep.
You tore it all apart. At what point were you like, hey, I'm all in on this, and I want to be a race car driver?
So I didn't go down to track till I was in my 30s.
Damn.
So we just street. And so
30?
yeah, I moved out to Arizona.
So you were in your 30s before you actually got on.
Yeah, I really got into track racing at all. Yeah, so I moved to Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Stopped racing again for a while because I'm broke.
Sure.
Go out there.
Well, people
I've got
don't
a
race,
kid
dude.
now. I've got a kid and a wife, and building it up, and go out to Arizona, and then I start doing well in my business and job. Now I'm a service manager. Now I'm a branch manager, and now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get a car. And so I tell my dad, hey, you remember when I told you I was gonna build the fastest street car in America and prove it? He's like, yeah. And I said, it's time.
Wow.
And he said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. but he said, if you want, we got this old Trans Am out back. And so my dad had bought for my mom, and it had been in the family since new, I think. And so it was a 1976 Trans Am.
Mm.
And she'd driven it to the bank and back for 12 years, and that was just sitting behind the shed. So I went and picked that up, brought it home, started gutting, doing the things. Bought a 455, built that up, dropped it. It was way faster than that 360 ever was. Like, ported the heads, did all the stuff. And then it just became this progression to where eventually I'd moved up to a nice neighborhood. This is crazy. I moved up to this nice neighborhood, had a 4-car garage.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I was uptown, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the car in there. I'm cutting the floorboards out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they, with a big crash, they fall out. And I'm like, yeah. And here come these two of my neighbors, like, what are you doing? And they look at the car. I've cut it all to pieces. I'm putting 4-link in it. I'm doing all this. They're like, we don't even know what that is. Like, what? You can't do this in your garage. I'm like, well, it's my garage.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Like, no, you can't do it in the neighborhood. And I said, well, I'll close the door then. So, I built this car. I put my own 4-link in it, my own frame rails, everything myself. That was the car that I built up myself, and that car went really fast. That was, pump gas drags. That car would run 8 O's at 176, and I built it almost. That car never saw a professional shop at all. We'd done everything ourselves.
Right. Me
Me and a couple buddies, and I don't know if that was very smart, but it's what we did, and that's what really got me on the scene. Where, we began to talk trash about being. I'd always tag my stuff on the internet would say fastest street Pontiac on the planet. And as you would know, there's a guy in Oklahoma eventually began to kind of pipe up about that.
Yeah.
And so, that's how that arrangement started.
Dude, he hung on to that car forever too, like Justin did.
Yeah, he did.
That there's a lot of wrecks there,
Mm-hmm.
but
That happens.
Yep, and I enjoyed watching you guys go after it too. That was cool. Pontiac on Pontiac there for a while. But so you took the Trans Am.
Mm-hmm.
You did it. You Frankensteined it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as a race car, how sound was that? Cage, no cage.
No, it was fully caged, and I did all the stuff to get it as legal as possible because we were racing
legal on the street.
Well, but we were so when I started doing track stuff,
Yeah.
then Hot Rod Magazine started doing these get-together races, right? But they had these they would have the NHRA rule guys there, and so I knew I had to make the car to meet those rules, and so we kind of did. But was it really safe? I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like this car today.
It was only one way to find out.
Yeah, and luckily I never did.
I was about to ask that. I was like, how did you know?
No, there was some sketchy stuff in there. I cut it apart a couple of years ago because now we're going to take it. That's going to be the car I'm going to redo again. That's going to be a driving car, super special.
Still got it?
Oh yeah. Wow. It's going to be something else, but it won't be like an MPK car. It'll be there was always a driver. It was always a street type car, and it'll just remain that.
Right.
Like a drag and drive car?
Yeah, exactly like a drag. In fact, very much like a drag and drive car.
Yeah.
But I hate the trailer thing. So
No, the trailer thing
it just
weirds
pisses me off. I can't figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the guys when they burn out with the trailers, but I'm like, I would have to unhook that thing.
I think at most I'll have a little hitch thing that goes in the back that has the 2 tires on it, maybe. Like, I don't know. We'll see.
That's cool, man. I have questions
let's have it.
about the no prep scene and the Street Outlaws. We used to be Street Outlaws scene.
Sure.
I hate to see that go away.
Me too. I mean, it's been such an icon.
It has.
And I'm going to say this. I think it elevated every automotive business in the world.
It changed the game.
Yeah.
It's the entire reason. Like, I sat at home and watched you guys, and I got incredibly passionate about a street racer like you.
Yeah.
I got incredibly passionate about not, I was like, man, I don't want to get in trouble. It's a felony now.
Yeah. Things are different.
And I was like, I want to build a car, and I take off to Baton Rouge. I buy a 15 Challenger, bring it to this guy. Here we are. And now I'm like, man, I think it did elevate all the shops. I think it did elevate. It took a lot of people what they were already doing and put racing back into the forefront of younger kids' minds.
I think so.
And a lot of people saw that was unhealthy.
Well,
which it blows my mind, right? Because here's what we'll do: we'll advertise pharmaceuticals on the television. We'll advertise all kinds of different things that typically, will ruin a kid. But when it comes time to to race or publicize something like that, people see it in a different light.
I think you're missing human nature.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it this way: change. People immediately resist change. And so you have this NHRA stuff and whatever, and here comes these crazy street guys, and I think it was all just immediate resistance,
dude.
Like this is not good. Oh no, it's going to be good for the sport. It's going to be good for everything. It's going to refill the NHRA stands. It's going to refill the shops that were dwindling and racing that was kind of dwindling. It's going to re-energize all of that. They couldn't see it.
They couldn't.
And now I think they have, and I think it's done positive things for the sport, and I'm happy about that because the sport that I love has become something that many people love. And it's not often that it happens that way. And so I feel good about it, but you're right. There were these people at the time going, this is stupid. And the truth is, it's kind of true. I mean, it's dumb to street race, but we did it all the time. But I also say we did it all the time, but my car, I just told you, at the track, the fastest run was 8.0s. Usually when I was street racing, we were making the car faster, but high 9s down to bottom 8s. It was the progression, right? To where, and everybody always says the same thing, like, well, why do you race 8th mile? Well, because the car would go 190 in the quarter on a street.
That's fine.
That's stupid. And so back it up, we're going to go 8th mile, and now we'll go 140. And it's just safer. And same reason today, after my crash in Rockingham a couple years ago, I'll never race quarter mile. I just won't.
Dude, it gets up there. And that's, I was telling Chris, like, new setups that, we're talking about pushing, a 4,200 pound car to close to 200 miles an hour and a quarter mile an hour.
Right.
And things get super sketch up top.
They do. And I think of it this way. My car will go 0 to 200 in super fast. Tell the times. Real fast. Okay. And then to go to the 80 or to the quarter, it's going to go 260. So you're accelerating to 200 in the last, you're only accelerating 60 miles an hour. You're spending all that time above 200.
You're just hanging on.
Yeah, but it's the time when if there's an accident, that's where you probably may not make it. It's just being clear, right? Like if you're under 200, you're 100 mile an hour, whatever. I've been there at 150. Like you're roughed up, but you're, it hurts. A few days later, you're, a year later, you're cleared up. But the above, look at John Force, 300 miles an hour.
Dude.
I don't care how good that car is at that speed.
Your body.
Your body is a ping pong ball.
Everything inside of it's a ping
being
pong
hammered, and it's just, it's not good for you. And that's just a personal thing. I don't mean to scare anybody else. I'm not trying to say it's bad for the sport or whatever. I just, there's a reason why I like 8th mile.
Well,
right? And I also say that street racing had its peak when cars were about that fast, right? But then when they are like they are now, like they're too fast to run on the street. You still need the track crew, you need the track safety, you need the stuff that's just different.
Got to shut the street down. You got to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and the show does that for us.
That's true.
We're embarking.
Go ahead.
We're embarking a crossroad on the Hemi Challenger platform where I do believe the next few outings that our car would take would be 195-ish mile an hour.
Yeah.
Which would be 4,200 pound car going that fast is pretty scary to think, because there's not a cage book out there that says how do you stop 4,200 pounds from crumbling in a cement barrier.
It's physics.
It's physics and engineering.
Yep. I mean, emotion and the unstoppable
inertia. It's definitely the inertia.
Right.
I got to ask the question.
Sure.
I got to. Have you heard any rumors about Dana White?
Heard rumors about Dana White? Yeah. Do I know anything about Dana White? No. He hasn't called. Dana White has not called me and said, "Hey, Robin, what do you think?"
Yeah.
No.
He probably should. I'm just kidding.
I mean, but you're not a bad start.
No, I mean.
So what about anybody else on the team now?
What do you mean?
Do you feel like they've heard for anything? Fairly silent?
I know this. They are trying to get a different network. They're trying to build this thing and keep it going. And they should, because it has such a following. But I'm not a TV guy. I build generators and, sell equipment, and we're really good at it, and we service it. Like, that's our thing, and that's what I do, and I've got so much time wrapped up in that. And they're race cars. And I love this group that we're racing with, and I like what they do, and I like the format of the Street Outlaws and all of that. But, whether it's a TV show and another network picks it up, which I think they will, it's not my call. And I haven't heard it, and maybe I'm an odd person that I don't dig in all the time. But I don't have, I'm not on the phone with Sam or Jay, like, come on, man, what is it? Like, it's not how I do my life. My wife gets frustrated with me sometimes because she's like,
you should know
ask. Yeah, why didn't you ask? I'm like, that's not my business.
I just need to drive the car, right?
Yeah, I'm real good at that.
And I need to fish more.
Usually, yeah. I love fish more, exactly. I love fishing.
Well, I think that's interesting, man. I appreciate the insight. It's a really good thing for the race community, honestly. It really is. And guys like you, are we close to wrap, Tori? Okay. And I think...
run you too long, did I? Okay.
No, dude. These things go by so fast.
They do.
They do. The community, just in what it's done for shops, for the community, for people getting into the sport, which, let's be honest, right? I'll be completely honest with you. Bracket racing makes me want to throw up.
Oh, I can't do it.
But I will tell you this. It's a big part of the sport.
Yeah.
I respect it. But at the same time, it's not what draws a crowd.
Well, it's a complete flip of ours. Bracket racing is 1,000 cars, 2 people in the stands. We're 2 cars,
1,000 people in the stands.
It's just a different, and one's, maybe it's more fun to watch. I don't know.
It's not.
But bracket racing, I understand the appeal because it's still competing with your cars at a level where you can afford to fit and you can make it fit. I get all of that and I understand why it exists. I'm like you. I can't do it.
Can't do it.
I cannot let somebody out. I can't do it.
I can't throw a throttle stop on.
No.
I can't throw any electronics at it to shut it down before the end of the line because I feel like I'm cheating myself. Chris, have you ever bracket raced?
Oh yeah.
You have?
That's all my uncles and even their friends' family. They're super gas guys. NHRA.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was born and raised around, was all the super gas stuff.
So you were like, I'm not doing that.
And I saw it, but I'm like, I just don't.
Yeah.
Why do y'all stopping at the end?
I'm like, why?
I never thought anybody but National Dragster cared about.
Yeah, I'm like,
racing.
It never made sense. You have these big giant motors and these super intense cars, and you just take off.
And then you take them.
And I'm like,
What
okay,
do you do?
well, that is so terrible. And then they're playing with this box, and I'm like, it just, what's the point in that? Just run it heads up. But that's how they've always been.
Well,
I could never do it. I understand bracket racing, and I understand the handicap.
yeah.
You know, the level playing field, but I think it's a doorstep entry for some people.
Yeah.
But no, manhood is defined.
Hey,
Heads up.
I always say, from the time Henry Ford put out 2 cars, they were racing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's human nature to do that kind of thing.
I think we have that in
We
our
race
time.
on feet. We race on our feet. We'll race anything. We'll race horses.
yeah.
We'll race cows. We'll race planes. It don't matter.
Yep.
We race how long. We even time how long someone can stay on a bull that's mad at you.
Oh,
Like, it's yeah.
I bet you can't. That's how racing started. Is like, I bet you can't.
Yeah. I can whoop you to the. Okay, let's do it.
Yep, hold my beer.
Yeah.
So both of you guys being in racing for as long as you've been in racing, I'm a newbie to the sport. Do you ever see a crossover where you see the bracket guys and you know, the guys that just, you know, want to beat each other up? Do you see it?
Scott Taylor was a bracket guy.
That's right.
Pinky was a bracket racer. I think on his right thumb is .000. So, you know, that triple zeros that they always shoot for.
Yep.
And look, those guys are good on the tree too. They're great. And so, yeah, I think people get into racing and they move into what they can afford.
Yeah.
And they move toward, you know, where life takes them sometimes or where their passions are. And that's how I got here.
Right.
But not through bracket racing.
And what? So opinions on tracks. We see them fading away.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do here?
Well, tracks are fading away. This is my opinion on it. Tracks are fading away because the real estate is more valuable than the track will ever be. Vandermeer sold that place, I think, $500 and some million. I hear rumor. I don't know that, right? But $500 some million. The track didn't make that over 500 years. Like it would never produce that much.
Yeah.
And so these big real estate plays, Palm Beach, that place went away because Walmart wanted a distribution center, and it was real easy to get the permitting processed over to a distribution center when you've been a drag strip or whatever. Like you're not going to have noise control. You're not going to have because it's already into the package. And so you see where tracks are winning, like Flying H in Kansas City, the new one.
Yep.
Fantastic drag strip. It's incredible. And those guys put a lot of money into it, made it super nice, but it's way out in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And we were here just this last one down here in Ennis. But you drive to Ennis and it's town's coming to it.
Oh,
it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, those are the death of drag strips. That's some old lady who says, yeah, it's really noisy. It's Saturday night. And you know, Karen gets mad, and there you go. It's
he faced that, you know, on your new shop. Instant resistance.
Yeah.
Instant. Like his neighbors were not. Some of them weren't welcome.
Couple that with the value of the real estate.
Yep.
The property becomes worth so much money.
But how do you explain Thunder Valley and stuff like that?
Well, it's way out in the country. You ever been to Thunder Valley?
Yeah. But I'm just saying it's gone.
Oh yeah. Oh, which? Oh, you talking about?
OKC.
Yeah.
But how do you explain that? Like, I mean, so for me,
Still going.
it's still going.
Yeah.
Did somebody
Thunder Valley?
buy it?
Thunder Valley's still going. Yeah. Somebody bought it.
Thunder Valley.
I didn't know somebody bought it.
I thought about buying a few, but you know, you come. Sometimes you realize that's my passion. I don't want to own it because then it won't be my passion.
Exactly. So That's what I was going through in my own head. I was like, one of these are going to pop up, and it's just going to be too good not to jump on.
I was asked a few years ago, do we want to invest or be a partner in it was I-70 Speedway at the time, but the Flying H, the guy who owned it before, hey, come on, be a partner. And the reason I didn't was because that's my happy place to go get away from things. I didn't want to be there having fun, but having to go like, well, how's the car count? How's the crowd? Like it's not, then it was work and not fun. So, but I then sponsor the track and help with things and anything to help them have a better racetrack. We'll do as a company. It's good for the company.
Really
Nice.
is. Really is.
Good.
You got any more questions?
No?
Well, cool. Tori, where are we at?
Last question.
That's on you, man.
One more, bro.
So we always end our podcast with a piece of advice that you would give.
Oh.
And it can be to the younger you. It could be to the up-and-coming person that you think needs to hear it. But what is a piece of advice that you would give somebody or your younger self right now?
Well, so I would change it then and give it to the younger people and not to myself. And I would say this, because this is such a defining part of who I am and what you don't see at the drag strip, right? But it's helping people in life experiences and grow. There's a misnomer in the world today that says, "Oh, if you do the job you love and you'll never work a day in your life." That's crap, and it's crap, right? Because it's always going to be work. You're going to have to work, and so I say, don't be afraid of the work. Enjoy it, but find the thing that your brain, your heart connects to, your type of personality that is what it is, and find the thing that makes that feel satisfied. And if you do that, you'll just have a whole different life experience and work experience. That's I think if you said, hey, what does this new generation get wrong? Or they get that wrong. Like go to work, do your thing. Like when I started as a diesel mechanic years ago, 30 some years ago, right? It wasn't what I wanted to do. It's what I had to do to eat.
Yep.
And then along that way, my father's advice then always came back to me, right? He said, hey, if you ever want to be promoted at a job, be the best at what you're doing. Be when they look around and say, hey, we need someone to go do the next thing. They look over and go, well, that guy's the best at this thing. Let's have him do that. And so finding the thing that your brain, like I always loved engines. I read Smokey Unick's Power Secrets book when I was in high school. I don't know how many times. Like I just read through that thing. I had the Chris Olson chassis manual. I'd read that 100, all that kind of stuff. I just loved that. That was my passion. And you'd say, well, you went into diesel engines then. That's not your passion. Well, no, it was engines, right? And then it was, oh no, you like building teams and you like taking care of customers and servicing things and make sure it goes well. Like this whole thing and you just grew one step at a time to where today I love what I do. And I just say that, like, find the thing that you can connect with and just take the next step. Keep going. Awesome. But always be the best. Be the best.
Yeah. So that's it. That's going to wrap up the pod.
Really is, dude. Robin, we sincerely appreciate you taking the time. First of all, we know exactly how busy you are. We do a little bit of that. We don't live the life that you live in the race cars, but we do a little bit of it. This guy's probably a lot closer, but we totally respect you coming out on a Sunday, sitting down with us and talking business, talking life, talking spirituality, and just talking cars, man. Those are all cool.
I love it. I appreciate you guys having me. I feel like it was perfect timing too. Like you asked me long before we set this date long before we knew it would be finals and we'd be there that close. And I also am glad we set the date because probably with what happened yesterday, I might have said, guys, like I'm not ready to talk. But it's good. Everything works out the way it should. And I was happy to have this experience. Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate the good conversation.
Badass, man.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get the boss next.
Yeah, you get Melody on.
We got to get that Mustang in here.
Bring it up as a mule, man. A test mule for you.
There you go, dude.
We'll get the boss up next and get her experience as a winner of Women in Wheels.
Yeah, there you go.
Mm-hmm. we flip the script on you.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
Be a spectator.
You have a backup driver.
Uh-huh. I'll line her up. Tell her.
It's probably women are probably better on the tree anyway. Oh, sorry, too soon. Too soon.
No, it's not. You know, hey, I'm going to tell you about that real quick. I've learned over the years to do one thing, and it is allow yourself to mourn, right? And so last night, I knew this podcast was this morning, so I said, okay, how many hours is it to 10 a.m.? We calculated 18. I started, I'm going to hate myself. I'm going to be mad at myself. I'm going to hate everybody for 18 hours. I'm going to be pissed. And then tomorrow I'm going to be over it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you have to move on, too. Like, you did a dumbass move. You made a mistake. Okay. Well, you got to move on.
Yeah.
Part of life, dude.
Here you are, man. Moving on. People know your story. People know the bigger part of that. And I don't think you've ever had the opportunity to do this, have you?
I've done some podcasts, but not at this level. I love car guys and business. Like, this is, I love it. This is passion. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So
Appreciate you.
Cool, man.
All right. Till next time.
Yep. Thank you.
We'll see ya.
See you.
Thanks.